On a sultry afternoon, May 3, 1943, at a makeshift hospital in North Africa, tensions reached a boiling point. General George S. Patton, known for his fiery spirit and unyielding leadership, stormed through the crowded tents with rage etched upon his face. Behind him lay a bedraggled American soldier, visibly shaken, nursing a flesh wound that bore the weight of Patton's fury. The air crackled with electricity as Patton, seeking to underscore his disdain for what he perceived as cowardice, raised his hand high. Then, in a moment that would forever punctuate the annals of military history, he slapped the soldier across the face. This defining incident abruptly crystallized a critical conflict within the Allied command. While Patton's brilliance on the battlefield had earned him a reputation that was both revered and feared, this visceral outburst illuminated the darker contours of his persona. It posed an urgent dilemma for his superior, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, who stood on the precipice of making an irrevocable decision that would reverberate through the war effort in Europe. Eisenhower, an architect of the Allied strategy, understood that Patton's success in battle was overshadowed by his volatile temperament. The slapping incident not only stirred outrage, but also posed a grave political risk to the nascent efforts of the Allied forces in North Africa. For Eisenhower, the stakes were monumental. Public opinion and morale hung precariously at the edge, and the unity among the Allied forces hung in the balance. In the crucible of this moment, the potential engineer of victory could easily become its most dangerous liability. With whispers of discontent spiraling through the ranks and potential fallout looming over the American forces, Eisenhower was faced with a choice that could either cement or unravel the fabric of the Allied military command. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows over the desert sands, the fate of a general, and perhaps the war itself, teetered precariously in the balance.
To understand the gravity of Patton's actions that day, one must delve into the intricate web of alliances and egos that defined the Allied campaign in Europe during 1943. The North African theater was a battleground not merely of soldiers, but of ideas and ambitions, where characters like Patton and Eisenhower played pivotal roles in a grand strategy designed to turn the tide against Nazi forces. The outcome of their clashes would shape world history. General Patton was a man of unparalleled military acumen, celebrated for his audacity and relentless drive. Yet this brilliance came tethered to a volatile temperament that often left a trail of discord. His furious dedication to victory was in stark contrast to the war's complexities, which often required more than just raw aggression. As his troops engaged in harsh desert warfare, his insistence on relentless advancement often stumbled against the realities of logistics, manpower, and cooperation among allies. Eisenhower, on the other hand, was a study in balance. Tasked with unifying diverse forces, from American, British, and Canadian troops to exiled Free French fighters, he recognized that success hinged not just on individual brilliance, but on collaboration. The increasing tempo of Patton's relentless campaigns unnerved many high-ranking officials who feared his propensity for rashness could fracture the fragile coalition they were attempting to fortify against a common, devastating enemy. Yet, as the day of the slap unfolded, Patton's explosive nature erupted in a moment that threatened to unravel the tenuous unity. The wounded soldier represented more than just one individual. He was emblematic of the fears and vulnerabilities that resided within the ranks. Letters began circulating among commanders, expressing both admiration for Patton's military successes and an urgent desire for discipline and decorum in the face of mounting pressures. As Eisenhower received correspondence filled with calls for Patton's reprimand later that evening, the implications grew clearer. To act decisively against the famed general could lead to discontent, undermining morale at a time when every soldier's courage counted. The mood in the tent grew darker as his aides argued for swift action, cautioning that the slap had sown seeds of dissent among the ranks. Thus began a strategic assessment that would pivot on the fulcrum of individual pride, military pragmatism, and the paramount need to maintain an appearance of unity. As the night deepened, Eisenhower sat alone in his quarters, weighing the scales of honor against duty, knowing that whichever path he chose could change the course of the war.
As the sun rose on May 4, 1943, the gravity of Eisenhower's dilemma pressed heavily upon him. His mind raced with the repercussions of Patton's actions and the unfolding tension within the ranks. The military reports began to pour in, and although the Allies had experienced victories, there loomed a darkness within the command structure. Diplomatic cables flew between Washington, D.C. and the Allied headquarters, filled with urgent discourse on morale, conduct, and the looming specter of boisterous leadership. Generals from across the Allied spectrum weighed in. Their opinions were divided. Some praised Patton's aggressive tactics and thirst for victory, while others warned that his unchecked bravado could very well sabotage all they fought to achieve. The British strategists observed closely, skeptically noting the fragility of the deceptive peace among Allied forces. In the shadow of the control tent, whispers of dissent grew more insistent. Officers began exchanging furtive glances, sharing unspoken concerns about potential fractures in their collective front. Eisenhower, well aware that Patton's brilliance lent itself as easily to blunders as to victories, knew that the implications of this incident stretched beyond mere military discipline. It was about preserving the very essence of the coalition. As Patton confronted his actions, he penned a letter to Eisenhower, filled with almost frantic urgency. "I fear I may have jeopardized not only my career, but our purpose here," he wrote, seeking either counsel or absolution. The raw humanity in his words stood in stark contrast to his relentless public facade. Yet for every letter of regret, there were countless others praising his audacity and brilliance. Eisenhower deliberated deeply, consulting trusted aides and briefing local commanders on the ramifications of a public reprimand. The decision hung in the air like the scorching sun above, intensifying the bewilderment of the men who would be directly impacted. Each side echoed out their calls for retribution or restraint, dividing opinions amongst the command. Ultimately, perceptions coalesced around an unspoken ultimatum. To tolerate Patton's shortcomings was to grapple with a commander who, for all his aggressive proclivities, might just be the key to turning the tide in Europe. By preserving his position, Eisenhower would be gambling not merely with military expectation, but with the broader political context. As internal discussions reached a fever pitch, Eisenhower faced a grim conclusion. The reputation of both Patton and the Allied forces hung in the balance, and to turn against the man who represented American might on European soil could mean condemning the hopes of a swift victory against the Axis powers. Amidst the swirling chaos, on May 5, 1943, the hour of decision arrived. Eisenhower, grappling with the weight of history upon his shoulders, convened a meeting in his private tent, summoning Patton and key advisors to confront the fallout directly. The atmosphere thickened with an unspoken tension as respect for the chain of command clashed with the raw power of Patton's personality. Eisenhower's voice echoed in the still air, steady yet laden with gravity. He laid out the circumstances surrounding the incident, emphasizing the urgent necessity for discipline within their ranks. Patton listened, his brow knitted in reflection, aware that this moment could redefine his military career and the fragile alliance forged against a towering enemy. "This cannot go undone," Eisenhower began, highlighting Patton's brilliance on the battlefield. "But we must choose a path that binds us together, not one that fractures the unity we've worked so hard to establish.
Each word weighed heavily, resonating beyond mere reprimand. It spoke to the heart of leadership and accountability, principles that echoed through the annals of military history. In that tent, with light bending through the canvas, the strategic mind of Eisenhower recognized the irreversible choice looming ahead. To act against Patton could signify a betrayal of principles and casualties beyond mere numbers. On the other hand, allowing such behavior to fester unchecked would embolden dissent and threaten cohesion among their ranks. Caught in this exquisite tragedy of leadership, he resolved to maintain Patton's position but impose consequences that demanded accountability. With a heavy heart, Eisenhower issued a public reprimand, a symbolic act designed to assert control while allowing Patton to retain his command. This compromise may have placated dissenters, but it would twist the knife further into the complicated tapestry of loyalty and ambition. Patton's response, a mix of relief and resentment, filled the air. As he understood the unspoken truth, he now floundered on a precipice between brilliance and vilification. Later that evening, he drafted a public apology to his men, insisting it was never his intention to sow discord. Yet the emotional toll weighed heavily upon him, and as he began to understand the implications of his behavior, he braced for the fallout. The fracture in personal pride had culminated in a tense alliance.
With the decision made and the lines drawn, the impact rippled across the command structure and into the ranks of the soldiers. On May 6, 1943, Patton delivered his apology before assembled troops, a spectacle stirring mixed emotions. The atmosphere in the camp felt electric, an amalgamation of loyalty and skepticism swirling among the men. Some cheered his words, while others exchanged wary glances, unsure of the man they had so deeply admired. Patton's acknowledgment of his actions did not erase the lingering doubts. As soldiers returned to their duties, they engaged in hushed conversations, grappling with the reality that their commander now walked a fine line between inspiration and intimidation. The apology may have quelled immediate outrage, yet it lacked the depth needed to repair the cracks appearing in the foundation of their collective resolve. Trust, once seemingly unshakable, had become a currency now traded with caution. In the following weeks, as the campaign in North Africa intensified, Patton's performance adapted. He channeled his fervor into strategic battles, fiercely rallying his troops. The Battle of El Guetar became a stage upon which he demonstrated his military ingenuity, turning tactical aggression into tangible victories. However, beneath the surface, the incident haunted him, an incessant reminder of how rapid elevation could be paired with perilous downfall. Meanwhile, Eisenhower remained acutely aware of the lacerations in the coalition's unity. His decision to support Patton had provided immediate stability, yet he recognized the fragility of such an arrangement. Allies questioned the wisdom of one man's unchecked fury, which could undermine the collective cause. In clandestine meetings with British commanders, the discussions grew increasingly tense, with all eyes on Patton and the potential for further incidents that might sow discord amongst allies at a critical juncture. The aftermath of the slap reverberated beyond the confines of military tents. Political ramifications grew as media outlets seized the narrative, examining Patton through a lens clouded by controversy and charisma. While victories were celebrated, the specter of that moment loomed large, reshaping the public's perception of the American command in the theater of war.
Ultimately, Eisenhower's gamble proved a microcosm of the larger war. Victories are built upon alliances that demand not only brilliance, but restraint. Patton remained a formidable force, yet the fracture created by his rage marked a pivotal change in the war's narrative. The coalition would persevere, but the bond had been tested, and trust, once a given, would need replenishing.
This fateful incident on that May day underscored a crucial lesson of warfare. Human egos, inflated by pride and tarnished by betrayal, could drive generals to both greatness and folly. What began as a singular act of violence turned into an irrevocable moment in the annals of military history, a defining chapter that foreshadowed the intricate dance of power, conflict, and human complexity that shaped the trajectory of the Allied campaign in World War II. The day Patton slapped a soldier became emblematic of an era in warfare where the stakes were not just military, but inherently personal. It marked a transformational point, teaching that the consequences of decisions, irrespective of intention, could echo throughout history, reshaping destinies on and off the battlefield.